I'm going to stop when I want to stop, not when you want to stop.
On this episode of Bound to Talk, Malicious Melissa and Jim Marcus discuss consent, types of love, poly relationships, and the differences between male and female submissives.
What are some other bad things that you've noticed over the years? So one is people masturbating improperly.
Well, at parties, one of the things that we have observers for is almost always, not just because they're waiting for people to safe word, because it's really rare that people safe word at parties and stuff like that. They're usually trying to push things farther. But man, condom.
At the sex parties?
Yeah, because usually there's always observers there, watching, and you're listening for safe words. I always advocate that everyone use the same safe words, red and yellow.
Sure.
And then I also use purple, which means everything's over. Let's go back to being normal human beings. Go out to breakfast or something like that, know. But the people around you, when they hear them, they should respond to it. So, like, if you're playing at a dungeon or something like that, and you're using the traditional safe words, if you safe word, someone's going to hear it. Which is right. They should hear that. And they should be like, hey, that she just safe worded, that sort of thing. So I always advocate using that. Also, it helps people remember it, right? But the one thing that the observers have to watch for most often is improper condom use. People suck at using condoms.
Really? Wow.
Well, this is
That's interesting.
This is the worst. All right, so so many people do this. This is something so many guys do. So the truth is, you have to be at least a little bit hard to get a condom on.
Sure.
And that's the bane of the existence for condoms. That's the hard part of condoms. So you'll see this happen in sex parties all the time. A guy might be with his fingers, might be fingering a young lady or something like that, and then takes sand out, and then jacks off a little bit so he gets hard and puts a condom on. If she has something, he just gave it to himself.
Yeah, it to himself. Sure.
And I'm not sure how many times you've seen that publicly, but I've seen that a lot.
I've never really watched it that closely.
Yeah. And you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
but yeah, you can see that if you go to a dungeon, you watch people play publicly and everything like that. And then very often people forget that, condoms are not to be worn during marathon sex without being swapped out every once in a while. So every once in a while, it's nice to have someone that taps on the shoulder saying it's time to change that condom. You've been going at this for 10 minutes now. You should probably change that condom. Right?
These are things I don't know.
Because they'll rip at a certain point,
Yeah, that makes sense. Friction.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't want the condom to rip, so, it's unfortunate. But that's what a lot of observers have to do, watching out for that sort of thing.
Is to stay aware
of condom use.
Yeah, wow.
Of Americans. And I keep thinking maybe it's Americans. Just exceedingly poor use of condoms. How many times have you watched someone try and put a condom on one way, it didn't go, so they flipped it around and did the other way, and you're like, throw that away. You've seen it happen, I'm sure.
I have not seen that happen. No.
In public?
No, when I was younger, guys didn't know how to do it, so I would just do it.
Yeah.
Well, I know how to do it. I've read things, I've seen things.
Give me that penis. I'll do this.
Yeah,
Let me do
there's
this.
been demonstrations. But you try to teach them, but do they figure it out? I don't know. But I want to make sure that it was on right, so I'm going to make sure everything's kosher. I don't know.
I think this is one of those things where people have to do so many times that it becomes a muscle memory.
Yeah.
Because in the moment is the wrong time to try
to figure it out.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's the wrong time to make your brain work at all.
I agree.
But again, it's one of those things where it could be a really bad thing if people do it badly. I think that doctors probably see that pattern, that STI pattern a lot, where it looks like someone's been fingering someone and then touched themselves, and
Is that the worst thing you've seen? Improper condom usage? That's huge, but
no, I mean, it is always really hard to get the backstory of other people's play, and to know that what they're doing is. At a club and everything like that, I know they put a lot of effort into making sure everything's going on is consensual.
At what club? At a dungeon?
At a dungeon or a club or something like that.
Okay.
They go out of their way to make sure it's consensual. No one's taking pictures they shouldn't. No one's.
Yeah, absolutely. There's protection.
The hard thing is always listening to other people's humiliation scenes, because they can be really brutal and very real. You know, like this is hard for me. I know a lot of people, like women of size, who enjoy humiliation play, being called fat and, you know, gross and things like that.
Yeah.
Super hard for me to listen to. You know, it just doesn't feel like play.
Well, it would be
To me.
the same thing as the small penis humiliation, which is huge.
That I have no problem listening to. That I'm like,
Why is that?
I can participate really in that too.
Okay.
Because I feel like
It's even men who are good, like a good
Yeah.
bigger size, and they still want that. Like they still want to be humiliated.
the thing I like about that too is I can participate in that long distance. So going into FetLife every once in a while and like going onto pages of guys who have pictures who like want to be humiliated for a short
Yeah.
period and being like, oh my god, that thing's so tiny. You know, I can participate long distance. It's so nice, right? But I don't know. There's just something about the body shaming fetish that I know a lot of people
body
have.
Shaming. It's just body shaming in a different way.
Yeah, I
You're
know.
shaming the genitals, or you're shaming the actual.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know
Body
why, but especially women, when they're in a humiliation scene for their body, it's hard for me to listen to,
Okay.
and it's not something that I enjoy.
So it's not
would
something
enjoy
you
doing.
would do to a submissive.
No,
Okay.
but again, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean,
It's just not for you.
yeah, a ton of people have that
Yeah,
fantasy, and I know
absolutely.
it's consensual, and I know it's brutally hard to listen to. You know, I mean, I think that we're so caught up in our body image sometimes, and
Oh, absolutely.
you know, how about you? Is there anything hard for you to listen to, or at a club or anything?
No,
or dungeon?
what's hard for me is the gangbang scenes.
Yeah,
It is just like, yeah, it's
even nice, pretty ones.
I have not seen any nice, pretty ones.
Yeah.
The ones you described, they seem fine. I don't want to participate in them, but they seem fine. But yeah, I'm just watching it. It's too much. It's like it's sensory overload. There's too
Yeah.
many things going on, and like you said, there's usually a lot of guys, one girl,
Yeah,
and she's just taking the D's. it's just too much for me to look at. So I'll be like glance and be like, okay, sounds good, and then go somewhere else.
it's remarkable. Like, it's remarkable how many women have that fantasy. It's the same thing with pegging for men. It's remarkable how many men have that fantasy. Like, even like brutally straight men.
Yeah.
You know, with that
I
fantasy.
just thought it was with the prostate. That's why they just wanted their prostate stimulated with the strap on, and of course being dominated, the ultimate domination.
Yeah.
I get that. But that's just what I thought it was. I don't know.
So I have this is so dumb. I have this theory. So like there's this couple, let's say, right? You know, Chris and Pat, whatever, right? So they get up every morning out of bed, and Chris goes over to the other side of the bed and grabs Pat around like this, and then lifts and then cracks Pat's back, you know? And they do that every morning. It's their thing, right? So Pat loves this, right? And maybe 50% is, oh, my back feels better afterwards, right? And then the 10% is the pain, loves the pain a little bit. And maybe 10% is the closeness that they experience together. And maybe, 5% is like, this is the time when Pat has Chris's total attention, and maybe 5% is it's their thing and nobody else's thing, and then 5%, who the fuck knows, right? To me, that's what kind of BDSM is.
Okay.
It's all those things wrapped in, and you're like, why do you like that? Well, I don't know. I can run through that entire list. It's like it's our thing, and it's intimacy, and the pain feels interesting, and then the pain stops and it feels interesting, and then the endorphin rush afterwards, and I can't even list these things for you. There's so many, But I think about that all the time whenever I talk to people who aren't into pain or BDSM. I talk about Chris and Pat and like what their relationship is, and just that little moment every morning, And can you understand that at least?
Well, is there a certain fetish that you're drawn to, like one particular fetish? And what would be like the origin story? Do you try to figure out people's origin stories too?
Yeah, I totally do.
You do?
I love the origin story of the fetish. Everyone I've ever heard has been amazing.
Okay.
Like I remember hanging out with, there was this friend that we used to play together all the time. And we were younger, and this is like before I was 18, but she was really into like large object insertion.
Okay.
So the thing was, how many giant things could I get inside of her? That was the play thing, and it was never big enough. It was never enough.
That was her fetish.
It was her fetish. She was so into this. In fact, while doing it, she wanted me to be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is fitting inside you." She's like, even talking like that was it was like large object insertion was the whole thing, right? But it was fun, and she's really wonderful. I really adored her. So one day we were outside, and we were like, "Let's go have sex outside." So we were like playing around on the fire escape for this building that was under construction. It was a beautiful building, and then we had sex, and we were doing all sorts of, like, we were peeing on each other, doing all sorts of stuff. So, and down the fire escape, it was really fun. So we kind of broke into one of the apartments, right, that they were, and there were boxes of stuff that were being loaded in, and one of the boxes was full of like old Playboy magazines, you know. And so we're naked, our clothes are outside on the fire escape, and we're looking through these old Playboy magazines, and she's like, "Oh my god!" And she found this Playboy magazine that she found under her dad's bed when she was a kid. And in this magazine, she's like, I remember this, I remember this, I remember this. But there was a spread in the magazine where there were all these, and it was about Wall Street, where there were all these super tall women squatting over buildings. It was a Photoshop-y sort of thing. Squatting over these buildings. They were naked, and they were looking like they were about to put the buildings up inside themselves. And she's like, I remember this entire thing. You know, this was like, I watched this over, I masturbated to this whole thing so many times. And we were like, do you think that's where
that's very cool.
it came from? Because this was like her first experience with these like beautiful women and these giant skyscrapers and these women squatting over these skyscrapers with this look of like, oh my God, I'm so hot in their faces, you know? And I don't know, I love that, like figuring out where that comes from. I feel like when I'm with a sub, I really love being wanted really bad. If someone is like pushing it just to want me really bad, doing whatever I say just because she wants me or he wants me.
To be wanted sexually?
Yeah, but
okay.
But to be wanted really bad, which as I get older and less attractive is hard and hard to get. But all right, to be wanted, and I know that part of it comes from the fact that I have totally fetishized consent.
Okay.
You know, like I fetishized like enjoying pre-negotiation and enjoying consent models, and I fetishized it to the point where mutuality and extremely active participatory consent is hot to me. You know, so it became like a political thing almost. You know, where your politics sort of shift to impact what's going on, and when someone acts like they cannot survive another minute unless they have you, it's so hot. And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy watching people really like come over and over again, or really enjoy themselves, because watching someone lose themselves in desire is hot.
So you would say that's your...
Yeah, watching someone completely lost because they want it so bad.
Okay.
You know, like watching someone who can't talk anymore, who can't do anything
because they're so overwhelmed.
because they want it so bad.
Okay.
Is, to me, that's like the pinnacle. That's the Machu Picchu of my fetish, I guess, the top of it. You know, and so I think one of the reasons why some of the things like gangbangs are fun, because you can watch someone get to that point. You know, sex parties are fun because you can watch someone get to that place where they're like...
Because it's sensory overload?
It's total overload of... Like, I love like switching back and forth between G-spot and clitoral orgasm for people until they just can't take it anymore. So one of the things that I love...
As what? As a forced orgasm situation?
I love forced orgasm play so much, you know? And being able to spend hours with someone getting as many orgasms out as humanly possible until they just can't think anymore is amazing. Because at that point, you know, you're like, they didn't realize they could have, 40 orgasms in a row, you know?
And you don't think that that's desensitizing? Is it because you're not doing it often? It's just like a once in a while thing?
Well, the objective is not to desensitize someone, right? Because you can't get that many orgasms if you go at it the same way every time. So the job is...
Oh, that's why you're switching.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want to dive in with a Hitachi right away, obviously, so you want to build, right? So the job is to build from a very mellow, sort of almost lazy sort of, and begin maybe with a clitoral orgasm, then go to a couple of G-spot orgasms and back to a clitoral orgasm, but depending on the person, right? And then start building to the point where by the end they're tied to a chair, and you have a Hitachi and, that sort of thing. Well, you're just building to it. But the objective is not to desensitize to them, because then you can't get as many as you're looking for.
But I meant like damaging them. You're not worried about damaging them in the end. Like, how many days are they going to have to go without an orgasm to get back to normal because they've had 40 in one 1 hour or in 2 hours?
It should never be that way. It should never be that way. I mean, you should be able to have as many orgasms as you like. Okay. It's one of the wonderful things about having a vagina is this wonderful sense that you should be able to have as many orgasms as you want. I mean, not that everyone has to, obviously, or has to enjoy it, because a lot of people don't enjoy, the sensations after a certain point, But if you lead up to it, well, you should be able to alternate and go back and forth. G-spots are much sturdier. That's a dumb thing to say, isn't it? G-spots are much stronger than clitorises. They can take a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so if here's a G-spot orgasm, and there's 3 of them, and here's a clitoral orgasm, and then go back to G-spot, Mm-hmm. But of course, you never want to desensitize someone.
But all
I don't want to damage someone.
Orgasms are not created the same.
They're not.
So some are going to be stronger, some are going to be less. It's it's all over the place.
It is totally all over the place.
So if there's just too many, I feel like it might get less and less. I don't know.
But I've noticed that it actually tends to get bigger.
Bigger in that 1 hour or 2 hour scenario. That's what you're talking
or
about.
like the all day scenario. Like if you have all day to spend with someone. Mm-hmm. Like if you get to like 20 or 25 orgasms with someone, very often by the time you get to that 25th one, they are at that place where they can't speak anymore, and they can't. That's the really cool place, mm-hmm. right? I guess that's the joy of the forced orgasm play, And there are some people I know that can do forced orgasm if they're tied up.
Okay.
Otherwise, they can't.
Mm-hmm.
They feel too. But if they're tied up and they know for a fact they can't do anything about it,
mm-hmm.
they can.
Like the mental.
Yeah, it's a mental thing.
But what about for men and multiple orgasms?
I don't know. You know what? I'm not sure if you've done a lot of work with milking men or anything like that.
Some, but not a ton.
I know for a fact that a lot of men love being milked,
mm-hmm.
and you can get so much. You can get an orgasm to extend for a long time
mm-hmm.
through prostate milking.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite the same thing. Mm-hmm. I've never been able to really kind of get. Men are done at a certain point, Luckily, men who are very submissive, there's something that takes over when they're done. Like when they can't come anymore, it's they have a thing that takes over, which is my desire to please.
Okay.
Which isn't always dependent on them being aroused.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a part of it that is almost like an honor-bound sort of thing.
Where their body's still going to react.
Yeah, they're still going to be serving. They're still going to be doing certain things even though they can't.
And you don't think that that's the need to perform just ingrained in them?
I think some of it is... Some of it's really the need to submit.
Okay.
The need to feel that dominant person
mm-hmm.
and do exactly what they say. Like if you find men who like to bottom after they've come, mm-hmm. those are the men who are like they're there for you. They're trying to submit. They're trying to, like they've already come, so bottoming is not delivering to them like all the pleasure that it would ordinarily,
mm-hmm.
But they're there. They feel good being used.
But what about desensitizing men? Like if a man, let's say the man has come too many times, he might not be as sensitive. So if he lets it build up for a day or two, he's more sensitive.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing around with someone's sensitivity.
Okay.
And of course the goal is never to permanently do anything to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with playing around with that sort of sensitivity and that sort of, I mean, I'm sure you've done lots of orgasm restriction and stuff like that, and mm-hmm. it can definitely, that's the kind of thing that can make someone incredibly sensitive. I'm sure you've seen where you can do orgasm restriction with men to the point where just touching them makes them explode. Mm-hmm. Send them home to their wives that way or something like that.
Sure.
But I don't know if any of that is can do real permanent damage. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to do permanent damage to that sort of thing.
But you think in both sexes you do see a desensitization for for like the genital area if there's too many orgasms. So both for, you said that the G-spot is more sturdy.
Yeah.
But let's say the clitoris and then the head of the man's penis.
I think that with women, you get a lot more out of it, obviously.
Okay.
Everyone's going to reach a point where they're just done, you know? But I think what's interesting for women is how long that can be before they're just done. For some of them, not all of them. But if you're the kind of person that enjoys forced orgasm, that enjoys that sort of thing, very often, 20 orgasms, 25, 30 orgasms is not a big deal, you know? And it can be really exciting and it can be really fun. And it can leave you feeling very in a whole different space afterwards.
Okay.
Like a different kind of subspace, I guess. Like I'm a big fan of what subspace does for people.
As far as the physical aspects?
I think
or
the mental aspects of subspace, especially when combined with aftercare that really is tailored to the individual. Like for some people, watching a movie is aftercare. Cuddling and watching a movie, For some people, making dinner and talking about politics is aftercare, It's like finding the right
connection.
Yeah, like the connection that reminds their psyche that they are that no matter what just happened, that everything is normal in the world now, and they are a member of the world that everyone like needs.
Okay.
That's important, So it's like I feel like there's that like connection. I had a really weird experience because I do lots of intimacy play sometimes. I had a weird experience a few years ago that was very strange and actually put me in a weird headspace too as a dom, which was I had a person I used to play with, and she really enjoyed this love play idea. So the idea was we get together every once in a while, act like we were completely in love with each other. So say I love you, act like you were married, act like you were just together for good, and just explore that and experiment with that, but totally go all in with intimacy and everything, treat the person like they're the most beautiful thing in the world and, be completely in love, stare deeply into each other's eyes, have sex, that sort of thing, right? So that was the session. And then immediately afterwards, we had gone into like, okay, now we're in aftercare and we're just talking to each other and laughing and being buddies. We're being buddies, right? Then she got a call that her dad had passed away. And he lived in a different state, so she couldn't go home to see him or to see the family. But he had passed away and she couldn't go see his body or the family or anything like that. And she didn't want to go home, right? And so the idea was, should we renegotiate and go back into the scene because she sort of needed it?
You were thinking that?
That's what she was thinking.
Oh, that's what she was thinking. Wow, that's interesting.
That she could really use someone who was more than just a buddy right now.
Yeah.
And even if it's not real,
Okay.
And I felt very strange about that. But people outside the community don't get stuff like that. That's the stuff that we're talking about, which is it's all about building intimacy, really. Even if it's violence, if it's sex, if it's love, if it's whatever it is, it's building intimacy.
So did you end up doing it or no?
Yes, because that's what she wanted. I felt very strange about it. I felt very much like, because I do think that there are some things that impact consent, and there are obviously violence does, obviously substance abuse impact consent, obviously ignorance, if someone doesn't know something that they need to know in regards to this, duress, obviously, authority, if you're someone's boss or something like that. But also I think distress impacts consent. If someone's very distressed, it's hard for them to make good decisions. So I didn't love the idea, but she was really committed to the idea.
Is that the only thing that you've done that you wouldn't do again?
Oh no, I've done things that I wouldn't do, certainly with a person, that particular person again.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you...
Because it didn't go well, or...?
Because I realized afterwards that person really wasn't prepared for it.
Oh, okay.
Even though they said they were. And there's some people that, who I know are committed to not safe wording. And I wouldn't want to play with them again.
Okay.
I need someone who is going to safe word when it's necessary. not
But
someone.
can't you judge though? Because I feel like I can judge.
Oh, it's so hard, and it's. Here's the thing, you never want to like. I'm sure you with this. You never want to deny someone their own agency of knowing what they can tolerate. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of what you do.
I do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that.
So you either get to deny them their own agency, or you get to err on the side of safety.
Well, that's part of like the fear play.
Yeah.
But I'm still reading them, and they've given me the power and the authority because ultimately they're deciding that they're going into this, and they know what they're going into for me to make that decision for them.
Yeah. I don't know.
You don't want that decision?
I don't want to. If someone really wants something, and I don't feel like they're capable of dealing with it, that's a tough one. You know, I'm sure you've experienced that before.
Absolutely.
You know,
And I don't usually go through with it. I stop.
Yeah, and when you I feel terrible sometimes about stopping, especially when someone like my thing is when I was very young, I decided I would never play with someone who'd been drinking at all. You know, so I don't have sex with people who've been drinking.
It's the worst.
So no one who's altered in any way whatsoever. And uniformly, people who've been drinking insist that they are capable of, you know, and they'll even get mad about it, you know. But I won't, and I wouldn't. So this is weird too, and kind of intimate. So I made a decision a long time ago also not to sleep with fans of my band.
Okay.
And I think that's because of something that happened that to me raised questions about how consent is impacted by authority. So I was at we were doing a show, and it was a really fun show. It was in Salt Lake City.
Do you want to share the name of your band?
I guess you could find out from anywhere, but my band's
you gave
called.
your full name.
I know. Well, my band's called Go Fight, but this is my old band, which is a band called Die Warsaw.
Okay.
But we were in town, and it was like in Salt Lake City, and we were playing a show, and this whole thing makes me feel terrible. So I'm recounting something that makes me feel terrible. So after the show, there was a very pretty girl who came backstage, and she was like very clear that she wanted to go back to the hotel room and hang out. And, you know, I was on kind of a high after the show, and I was like, oh, sure, that sounds like a great idea. And she was there with her sister, who was her twin sister, and they didn't look exactly alike, but they looked very close. They were both very pretty. And so I said, and I kind of joking almost, yes, if you bring your sister with. And she went and talked to her sister, and they both agreed to come back to the hotel with me. Right? So they did. We went to the hotel, and the three of us had sex. So the next morning, her sister said goodbye, kissed and left and everything like that. And then she and I this girl and I walked to the tour bus, and she started crying. And she said, last night I really didn't want my sister to be there. I wanted to just be us. I really like you, and I've never done something like that before, and I feel really weird about it. And she was crying. And I felt terrible because I realized that at that point, because I was on stage, because she was a fan of my band or whatever, I don't think she felt comfortable saying no.
Oh, absolutely.
To that. And I didn't see it the night before. To me, everyone was laughing, having fun, playing around. She was laughing, her sister was laughing. Everyone was having a really good time. Everyone was really playful. They were both flashing me. It was like, it felt really, you know. But in the morning, I realized that I don't think they had the proper tools to say no to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know. So I kind of.
Was her sister really into your band too, or was it more she was trying to please her sister?
I think she was trying to please her sister.
Yeah, that's hard.
You know, and so there was a lot of dynamics there that were kind of weird.
Sure.
You know, and she felt bad about it, and I felt, of course, terrible about it. So I made a decision not to sleep with fans of the band.
After that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, because I feel like that impacts that too. The unfortunate ramifications of that is that I haven't dated in a very long time anyone who actually likes what I do. You know.
Oh, that's interesting.
But that's okay. I think that's just one of the fallouts of life, right? But it's weird because when I talk to people from other bands, they don't have a problem with that. A lot of them don't. Some of them do. Some of them recognize the weird authority issue that impacts consent. But I think it's severe. I think it's And I would never want someone to think I'm looking down on them for doing something like that.
Okay.
But it is, for me, it was a big enough wake-up call for me not to want to do it again.
How many years ago was that?
Oh, that was like 20 years.
Oh, wow.
It was a long time ago.
Okay.
It was a very long time ago.
Okay.
You know? But yeah, it's over 20, 25 maybe. That's probably the thing that really impacts me the most, is in terms of like, you know, all of this that I would definitely never do again.
Okay. What about things that you haven't explored yet? Is there anything that you still want to do?
Oh, I mean, sure, there's lots and
It
lots of
sounds like
things.
you've lived a full life of all these fun
Yep,
things.
time to die. Yeah. No, I mean, I just really enjoy getting to know new people and meeting them. I feel like almost every new person is really exciting. You know, it's weird. I actually I love Munches because I like meeting other kinky people and talking about what they like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if we're never going to be involved or anything, even if the sole part of our involvement is me brainstorming ideas with them for what they can do, it's still really fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's still really hot. You know, like I wish I could get paid for my job were to sit around and brainstorm with people how they can have fun sex experiences.
Well, that's why I asked you if you
You know.
turned it into a business.
Well-
because you do have the formula for a business.
I'm not sure, like, but wouldn't it be great? Like, there'd be a fun business to be like, here's like older couples, like help you, like tell me what you kind of want to do, and I can help you come up with a fantasy, and then plot it out. Because what I'm noticing lately is that very often, if you just ask people, they'll do things for you. You know, like I wanted a location and asked them if we could just use it, and they're like, sure. You know, and I never would have thought that when I was younger, that sometimes you can just ask people and be honest. We want your location for a sex party. Is that okay?
Okay.
And I'm kind of amazed at how many people are okay with that.
But are they conservative people or not really?
They're just like regular people on the street, and it makes me more and more think that we're moving in a direction where everyone's kinks are a little bit more on the surface than they used to be, and it's not that big a deal anymore.
Is that your favorite part of this whole thing? Exploring other people, what they want and what they like?
Oh yeah, that's so much fun. I'm not sure what's your favorite when you meet new people, or you're
Hearing about their experiences,
Mm-hmm.
because I can live through their stories and then share mine, and they can live through mine.
right.
Without actually having to experience that, because
Yeah.
maybe you just want to experience it from a distance.
Yeah, that's great, and that's actually how I manage jealousy, basically.
Oh, for
You
your
know.
poly lifestyle?
Well, just in general, I've noticed that like a lot of people manage jealousy different ways, and I think for me, there's two ways I can manage jealousy well. One, I can talk things through with someone, like if I'm dating someone,
their
and
feelings that
yeah,
they're having?
my feelings, their feelings, and just talk through what happened, right? Because I think for me, I think in general, jealousy is lots of different emotions, not just one, right? So lots and lots. But some of them are stronger than others. For me, the strongest thing is not knowing. That's the part that gets me. So if I'm have a partner and my partner is with other people, for example, if I can talk to that person and know everything that's going on, I can fantasize about it. And I can fantasize about them having fun and get through it through compersion.
Okay.
And that's the best way for me to get through it. So it's like that's the joyful way for me to get through jealousy. So like let's say I'm dating someone and you know she's just came back from being with another partner and she tells me all about it and I can fantasize about her having a really good time. That's how I can get through it.
Okay.
You know?
Because you just want her to be happy?
Well, that's the compersion part of it. I want her to have really good sex experiences, you know?
Okay.
So if I know everything about it, I can fantasize about it. I don't have that lingering sense that I don't know her as well as somebody else may, you know? And I can explore it and play with it. So to me, the joyful way around jealousy is talking about it together and then fantasizing.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that works for other people.
Well, what if it's just more than sex, though? Because it sounds like, you know, they're just going off and having sex, but maybe they're not connecting with the other partners. How do you deal
Well, it's always connection.
with connection?
I think it's always a connection. Like someone will, the connections are admittedly like harder to manage jealousy wise than the sex.
Yes,
but they're
that's
part
what
of
I'm
what make it all.
asking.
They're part of what make it all exciting for someone, you know, and fun. You know, so like you could sit here and hear your partner say that they laughed together and they cuddled afterwards and they did this and everything like that. You know, it's still part of this whole like rounded fantasy of them having fun, them enjoying themselves.
Do you have a primary partner now?
No, this is a very strange time in my life because my wife and I broke up about 6 months ago. Okay. And in reality, it's weird because when you're poly, people are always like, well, it's because of that. In reality, our relationship would have been about half what it was if we were monogamous.
Okay.
You know.
Because you needed to get other needs met from other people, or
not me necessarily, but just the fact the openness allowed for a lot of like I think the openness of poly situations allow for a whole lot of escape valves in relationships. You know, we were together for 10 years.
Okay.
You know, and that's about the length that my relationships tend to last. You know.
10 years.
Yeah, about 10 years, I guess.
Okay.
But they give you an escape valve where it's like you've got someone else that you can explode into, and you know, everyone has so much in them, you know, and if you feel like, oh my God, I need something right now, I need to escape, I need to get away, and if I can't, this relationship's over. Mm-hmm. You know, and so you get away for a little bit. You know, you explore with somebody else, you do whatever, you know. I think that
so it's a way to hold on to your primary partner?
I think in the best of all possible worlds, yes, it is.
Okay.
You know, we know that romantic love and attachment love are two different things. Mm-hmm. Romantic love starts, you know, and it lasts maybe a year, mm-hmm. tops, you know, and hopefully it fades into companionate love, mm-hmm. you know. But to say that someone will never be able to experience romantic love ever again the rest of their life because they're with their companion.
Are you talking about the head over heels?
Yeah, mm-hmm. yeah. It's called what, Lumience, right? What is it called? Yeah.
But can't it just go into the deep love, but you're still so into that person, but you have also this deep love for them?
Well, there's actually Lumience, this beginning, this head over heels love, is an actual chemical reaction,
yes,
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So companionate love doesn't come with its associative sort of like chemical, you know, rush. To say to someone you can never have that chemical rush ever again, I think is real hard.
Okay.
And a lot of people might not be able to live with themselves if they knew they could never experience that again.
Okay.
You know, I don't necessarily think that I need that, but I'm not going to deny that other partners do. Mm-hmm. You know, like I would not ever want to be in a situation where I'm denying my partner the chance to fall in love with somebody.
Well, I mean, fall in love could be two different things. If it's just the head over heels love, but you're still rational in some fashion, then maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
But what about where you just lose your judgment? I don't want that again.
I don't either. But this goes back to the first thing we were talking about at the very beginning, which is people are amazing. You know, and the job, if you're going to be poly in any way whatsoever, and even the job if you're in the BDSM community, the job is not to fall into every star.
Yes.
You know, because every star has a huge pull.
Create distance. You're forming major connections, it sounds like, with your partners. I like distance. Because I don't want that. I don't want the line crossed.
I think you're going to find, you probably see this too in the community, that there's people who create their certain amounts of distance for certain kinds of intimacy. My fear is that, first of all, I feel uncomfortable telling partners what they can do in terms of intimacy and what they can no longer experience ever again. You know, I want them to be able to experience everything they want to experience. My fear is again this darkening sort of model where this friendship darkens us a little, and then other kinds of telling secrets darkens a little more, being sexually intimate darkens a little more, and eventually it looks like love and it feels like love. You know, my fear is that happens all day long, constantly all around us, and asking someone you're with to deny that over and over again is also legislating them, and that's tough. It's really tough. Like with my ex-wife, I was hoping that she was holding on to enough of our relationship when she was exploring with other people, but I can't force that.
So that's what happened?
Yeah. I can't force that, and I can't make that happen. The truth is that all relationships end except the ones we're in when we die, which, of course, go on forever into heaven, you know. That was just a joke. But, and I think it's important to recognize the value of the relationship when you're in it. Like, I have this model where I try really hard never to hold against people what they did at the end of a relationship. Because very often the things you do at the end of a relationship are the things you do to get the hell out of a relationship. You know? Like, you've always known, I'm sure you know people like this, where they did the one unforgivable thing at the end of their relationship because they needed to be the fuck out of that relationship, you know? And that's not who they are. You know? Like, I know this person whose wife said, I will tolerate almost anything except you being with prostitutes. That, spending our money on somebody else, I can't tolerate that. And of course, that's what he did. And when he did it, I think there was definitely a part of his brain that was like, I need out of this relationship. And this is the only way.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree.
I'm a fixer. I like to fix things. So I know for a fact that when people have needed to be out of relationships with me, they've had to make pretty grand gestures to get me to recognize the fact that this can't be fixed.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah,
like,
so
I'm
you
self-aware
just
enough to
hold
know
on.
that. Yeah. Because I'm always like, well, yes, let's try and fix this. Let's try, you know. So people make big gestures. I think it's important not to hold those big gestures against them.
Okay.
You know?
I agree.
Because that's not necessarily who they are.
But if there's too many things that need to be fixed, maybe that partner's not right.
Oh, yeah. You're 100% right. It's so hard in the moment to tell that, though, isn't it?
Yeah, you can always hindsight
Yeah.
look at it.
That's why I think it's got to be the most, like, hubris of all time to sit here in the BDSM scene and play around with love and affection and stuff like that, when those things are so much bigger than we are, and will squash us like cockroaches. You know?
And you think that's what people are doing in the BDSM lifestyle?
Oh, we play with intimacy all day long. We play.
Intimacy, yes, but
Yeah.
love.
Well,
You're talking about the darkening, how
Yeah.
it just happens.
that
Okay.
intimacy builds, and when you get, it's almost like triangulating. You've got this kind of intimacy and this one and this one and this one, and all of a sudden they're all combined, and that little area in between gets really dark, and you're like, I'm in love. You know? And I've seen it happen over and over again, you know? I don't want to go back to this. I'm 52 years old. I've seen a lot of stuff, but I've seen it happen over and over again where it's unexpected for people. You know? How was I to know that just by, you know, I was friends with this person, and then we started having sex, and then I told them all my secrets, and then I needed them really badly one night, and I talked to them for 3 hours in the middle of the night, and then this happened, and then this happened, all of a sudden, bam, now I feel like we're in love. How was I to know? Well, that's just how intimacy works. It just builds up. And the truth is that if people weren't so awesome, it'd be easy to just walk away from all of them,
Okay.
you know?
So
But
what do you think love is?
I personally think that God, this might sound horrible, but let me try and see. Let's see if this doesn't sound horrible. And of course, I know no better than anybody else, but
I
I'm
don't
just going to
think
say
anything you've said has sounded horrible.
I think it
at
sounds
all.
sounds horrible. But all right, so I remember years and years ago. God, I think I might have been like 22. I was with my friend Rhonda, who we were kind of dating but kind of not, hanging out and just fooling around in the playground. It was after hours in the playground, and we were having sex and fooling around and then jumping around and talking and laughing and, you know, sliding down the slide, and I was stealing her clothes. And we were just doing the stuff that you do when you're kind of like having fun and you're young. And it hit me, I could marry this girl and be perfectly happy.
How old were you?
I was like 22.
Okay.
I'm like, I could marry this girl and be perfectly happy.
Okay. Because you're having so much fun in the moment.
Well, it was more like this realization that, like, I could marry this girl and be perfectly happy because she's amazing.
Okay.
But my friend Shelly that I was hanging out with a couple nights ago, I could marry her and be perfectly happy. You know, my friend Brian that I was hanging out with, I could marry him and be perfectly happy. You know, there's any of like 5 or 6 people I can think of off the top of my head that I've had sex with in the last couple of weeks that I could marry and be perfectly happy with.
How can you say you'd
Right.
be perfectly happy with them,
But that's the
though?
thing. It occurred to me, it hit me, that none of these people, I'm not perfect. None of these people were perfect at all.
Okay.
But the thing about relationships is that's not necessary. The only thing that's perfect is your promise. You make a decision, right? If I had decided at that moment, Rhonda's the person I want to be with, like, I could have made that work. If I had decided Shelly's the person I want to be with, and she'd made the same decision,
So the commitment.
the commitment, I realized at that moment that this idea of the
Do you think that's what marriage is?
I think
Making.
this is the part that's going to sound horrible, maybe.
Okay.
I think that this idea that there is a soulmate out there for you is complete bullshit. I think that you find somebody that you adore, and truthfully, there's going to be so many people that you adore. You know, again, we go back to this whole idea that people are amazing. People are amazing. Like, I've met so many people that I think are just like, that I think are 10s.
Okay.
You know, like that person's a 10. That person's a 10. That person is amazing.
I
You
have
know?
not found this, and he has not found that either.
Well,
With a lot of people.
so you don't feel like you meet people and you're like, that person is just incandescent.
Well,
I think with
with dating, explain your
friendship-
dating, how your whole dating life went.
Explain your dating life.
Yes, explain your dating life.
I don't know. I just wasn't really looking for a relationship.
Yeah.
You know, I would date, go out, have fun. I wasn't looking for one night stands either, but I was looking for connections, but
Yeah.
they weren't necessarily, you know, anything I would consider long lasting or wanting that kind of attachment.
Yeah.
I guess. And then with her, it just felt, you know, more natural. Like I just enjoyed being around her and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
it almost happened more by accident.
Yeah.
Is that
Because he was avoiding it. He
Yeah.
didn't want these things.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you know, someone who he thought was amazing, me, like fell into
you
his
are.
lap. Thank you.
Yeah. Instead of, well, I think some people maybe
And he did
because
try
they,
to push me away. And I'm like, dude, if you want this to happen, you gotta give me more than once every 3 weeks to see me. Like, this is not gonna work.
Yeah.
And he did, and he stepped up.
Yeah, but I think sometimes people, because they're looking for the relationship, then
Yeah, and
make
that was
someone
my issue
fit
Right.
in the past.
into that.
Well, I got
I was
this.
trying to put people in boxes.
Right.
And they weren't fitting. Instead of just maybe doing what he does and just not connecting too much
Right.
until you actually find somebody who makes you feel.
Right.
I don't
Well, I just got to the point where I realized that, like, I didn't believe that there was a soulmate for anybody, and I didn't believe that there was only one or two people that you could possibly have a connection with. That you meet somebody, and that if they really do hit you here, you can make a decision, and your decision can be perfect. That promise can be perfect. You know, the people aren't going to be perfect. That promise
I agree.
is the thing that's going to be like amazing. You know, and it could happen unexpectedly. I mean, you could meet someone that you never expected this to happen with, and you can have your entire list of what you're looking for, but that person doesn't necessarily match any of it. I have my list of what I'm looking for. I know I have a type, you know, and I just figured this out a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I have a dating type. Do you ever do this where you're trying to figure out what your type is?
Oh, for sure.
So I'll tell you, if you tell me your type, I'll tell you my type. So I realized my physical type is for girls, I like girls that look like fairies.
Okay. So dainty.
They just look like, when you see them, you're like, that person might have pointed ears. You know, they look like a fairy. And if you look at everybody I've ever dated, like put their picture on a wall, you'll be like, that looks like the cast of Evermore or something like that. There's a whole bunch of fairies on the wall, you know. And I just recognize what, you know.
So it's the body type. Is it the pixie haircuts too?
Not necessarily. It's but that's just
Because I
a
imagine
physical
just
thing.
somebody who's very graceful and smaller boned.
And you know what? Body type doesn't even play into it. It's like this person could be part of their face looks like a fairy, and I'm sorry.
I don't know what the face of a fairy is. I
That's
know
just
the
as
body
far as
of
it
a
goes.
fairy.
It's just as far as it goes. It's weird. What's your type? Have you figured it out?
So
Clearly Adam, but
actually it is an Adam. So it was the really white skin, like the really, really extremely white skin, and that's what I was always drawn to.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe that was my preference, but that's not what made me happy.
right.
That's just something small that doesn't matter. So, and then, the dark hair, dark eyes, which, yes, he has. But he's a little tan. And initially, yeah.
He's a little tan.
This is just his natural tan color. This is not summer. So,
Yeah.
I wasn't, put off by it. It's just not something that I was extremely drawn to. Now it just doesn't matter anymore.
Well, do you think you get drawn that that when you get to, like, I've noticed this, that everybody that I've ever, like, been passionate about, I love the way they smell. Like,
He
I
smells
love
wonderful.
it.
He smells
All right,
wonderful.
do you think
yeah.
that happens first or afterwards? Because I've been trying to figure this out. Do you
smell?
fall for someone first and then you start to love their smell?
So I
Or-
was falling for him before we met, just on like FaceTime conversations.
So you think the smell
Our
thing is
back
secondary?
And forth, usually it's a primary thing, but the back and forth was so great. I said to my best friend, I'm like, there's something there.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even met him yet. But I didn't know what it was going to be that was there, whether
Yeah.
it was a short-term relationship or a long-term or whatever it was going to be. But there was potential.
Yeah. But you like the way
And
he smells, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
See, that's the thing.
I love the way he
For me, it's like
smells.
I've noticed this when I'm really, really into somebody. I just love the way they smell so much. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And I'll find myself doing this horribly awkward thing, asking someone not to bathe before they come over.
Okay, because you just like the smell.
Yes, like that's a horribly
Yeah.
awkward thing to ask somebody. Can you please not bathe before you come over?
I think that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, but it's gonna sound a little weird, right? But I never know if is that a pheromone thing that like draws me to like someone,
Because I've had
or
guys who I was really attracted to, and they didn't smell right. And there was even one person who I even put peppermint oil to mask it to dry, because I still wanted to have sex with them, and it was just a terrible experience.
yeah,
I
I'm
was
gonna
like,
have sex
"All
with you,
right,
but not the way you smell right
I
now.
gotta get no. It was just his natural smell. I really didn't like it.
Yeah.
And we could be walking by people, and I'll just smell the guy, and I'm like, oh, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that he stinks. He just doesn't smell good to me.
Right.
But it's not like he's walking around with body odor.
Yeah.
And so there are articles on that. So it's about our immune systems and whether or not they're opposite immune systems. So then when we procreate,
Right.
our offspring have, optimal
Yeah.
conditions to
Because
thrive.
when I'm really into somebody, it's that's a very intense part of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I adore the way they smell, you
Yeah.
know, and I guess it's very like visceral. And then of course, you're asking people not to shower, and that's just a very, very weird thing to ask people when they.
I've never done that before, but I do enjoy like after the gym
Yeah.
because they're very strong smelling. I
Yeah.
like that. Or like a whole night of like sleeping and maybe sweating, and then in the morning,
Oh yeah,
it
that's
smells
wonderful.
Great.
Or like someone like just leaves your house and you just love the way your bed smells now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's such a nice feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess the idea was that for me, love is more of a decision at the beginning than I think for a lot of people. Like I always felt like I was a good poly person because my promises meant something. Like if I had a polynormative partner, no matter how much I adored a new person, I was not going to fall for them.
Okay.
I knew I could do that. I'm good at that.
So, what would you shut off your feelings?
No, I would just make a decision not to go there.
Okay.
To me, because
But you wouldn't have to create distance in order not to get there?
no, I feel like to me the decision is a really big part of this, and that comes down to the promise. Like make a promise and decide. But I still feel like I've experienced really, really passionate love with friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to experience that. I have a lot of friends that I can say that I really adore, but that sort of passionate love for friends where we don't have enough words for love in English. We don't have a word for when you see a friend of yours you haven't seen in a long time, they walk in and it's almost romantic. You just want to touch them.
Yeah,
You want to feel them. You want them to cuddle with you and watch a movie, but they're just a friend, but you just want them there. We don't have any words for these things.
Well, I thought that was like being polyamorous, like that you could be in love with your best friend, but also in love with your husband or your boyfriend.
Yeah, but we force that word love to do all this heavy lifting. Like
Yeah.
it's obviously the Greeks have all these different words, eros, and but we force it to do all this heavy lifting, and then we pretend like the problems we have are organic when they're really semantic.
Okay.
Like imagine I should not say I love pasta and I love you the same way. There's
That's so true. Yeah.
that's a flawed language
It
right
is,
there.
absolutely.
And the thing is, even this, like, I love you and I love your pussy.
Yeah.
And I know it feels like but I think that so many problems happen because those two are just too
Is it thrown around too much? It's just overused?
Well, because we have to, because we don't have.
Yeah, because it's a limited language.
words.
Yeah, we don't have other words for it. Like there should be a word where it's like, I am so enjoying having sex with you right now, where every part of your body is amazing, but I don't maybe want to marry you forever, and it doesn't mean I love you, you know? Like, I have to say the word twice to say love. I don't love you. I love you,
because
you
you're
know?
trying to-
So, but the thing is, it causes us to say things during sex that we can't pay off. I mean, everyone knows this is a
for
huge
sure,
problem with
absolutely.
the human race, that we say stuff during sex that there's no, you know, like there's got to be a word, there's got to be a different phrase when you just have sex with someone that it's so amazing, you feel so connected, but clearly you're not making a lifelong plan to be with them. But
Who wants to hear that though during sex? Like, I'm really enjoying you, but this is only going to be a temporary enjoyment.
but
Because next month, you're not.
But
gonna
it's
be
true though. It's like, that's why so many people, I think, are inspired to say I love you to someone when they don't really mean I love you. What they really mean is that I love this.
there. Yeah, that's true.
You know,
Because that's how sometimes the I love you slip out.
they do,
Yeah.
because what you really mean is everything that happened here tonight. I love this. You know, I love the way you smell, and I love your pussy, or your cock, and I love, you know, just the feeling of intimacy. I love the fact that you didn't go to work tonight to be here. I love, you know, just the way you look right now. I love every noise you made. You know, like, I love this. And there's no way to say that, I think, except I love you. You know, and that's where things start to get kind of awkward.
So I wanted to go back to your promise, because that's what I'm hearing a lot from the men, especially the men who, women are brought in. Let's say it is like a threesome scenario, whatever the case is. A lot of the men that I've been talking to, they're saying that they've made a promise to their partner. They've committed to their partner. They know that their partner is not going to lose them to anyone else. And all the guys are sitting there saying this, and I just, it baffles me. And then the women still have the jealousy, so they're putting all these rules and conditions because there's the fear of losing their partner.
Yeah, because jealousy is not rational. You know, like, this is the best way you can realize that jealousy is not rational, I think. You're going out with somebody, right? Like, let's say, for example, Adam, you're a poly, and he had a date tonight with a girl that you thought was way prettier than you. And you might be really jealous.
Okay.
And then let's say he had a date with someone that you thought was way less prettier than you, and you might be really jealous, but for completely different reasons.
I have done poly relationships before and open relationships. I've done all of that. And I have been in both of those scenarios.
Yeah.
And I actually...
But they both feel bad for different reasons, don't they?
I got angered when he was going with women who were not pretty.
Yes.
Because it was like, you have this at home and you're going for that? Are you out of your mind?
You think of me like this? Exactly. You think of me like this, right?
It's just, it was ridiculous.
But that's part of jealousy, too.
Yeah.
Wait, you're putting her in the same category as me? Oh.
Yeah, for sure.
Shame
or
on you.
choosing her to spend time with over me. And she's...
And then the other way makes you jealous too for totally different reasons.
Yeah.
So you start to realize jealousy is all these different emotions, like fear of losing the person.
There's the fear of loss if the person's way more attractive than you.
And then there's the ego, and then there's if the person's way less attractive, there's that, oh my God, I feel like now I'm this.
Don't you think that that's so much more complicated than like a monogamous relationship where you have to just try to reinvent experiences together?
Well, here's the thing that I think. First of all, I don't necessarily think that, and this is going to sound like a horrible thing again to say, I don't really believe that monogamous relationships exist.
Okay.
And I think statistically that's borne out, that people just they just don't do it.
Well,
they're just not monogamous.
Because of feelings? They might have feelings for other people or interest in other people, or you're saying that they're cheating?
Because the majority of people cheat. And what's interesting about this too is when you do studies of it, you realize that most monogamous couples don't even agree on what they consider cheating to be.
Yeah, that's true.
So my feeling is you can have a healthy monogamous relationship and a healthy poly relationship, right? And I think they both require massive amounts of talking.
Yeah.
But monogamy does this weird thing where it coerces people, it tricks them into thinking they're having a normal relationship, that they don't have to talk to death.
That makes
Right?
sense.
And so the reason why monogamy sometimes I think fails, is because they don't realize that every relationship is bizarre and unusual and weird, and no two people are going to agree on what they consider cheating to be, and no two people are going to have the same needs. And what's weird about this is that what poly people eventually discover, which is that your needs change day to day, is something that's hidden in a monogamous relationship, right? So let's say I'm in a poly relationship with my girlfriend, Winnie the Pooh. She's wonderful. I love her, Winnie. And I'll be like, one day I'll be like, you know what? I met this awesome piglet. I'm going to go hang out with the piglet tonight, right? And Winnie had a great day at work, and Winnie's like, oh, you go with Piglet and you have fun, and you fuck that Piglet and you have a really great time tonight, and I'll see you when you get home, right?
Okay.
Or I do the same exact thing, and Winnie's had kind of a bad day at work, and someone made her feel like maybe she was a little pudgy, and now she's like, okay, if you feel like you have to, and
But she really
she's
doesn't.
miserable for the rest of the night, right? And what's weird about this is that Winnie's not like all over the place, and she's not irrational, and she's not whatever. She's just a human being whose feelings about how they feel sexually change every minute. Because that's us. That's the human race.
Sure.
We are driven. Like I've noticed this. You throw a sex party for someone, and they could be like, "I am so into this. I am going to do this person. I'm into everything." And the day comes along, they're like, "I'm not feeling it," and you have to cancel it. There's nothing else you can do about it, right? You try again, because people's feelings change way
for
more
sure. Yeah.
than their intellectual commitments. You know, like stable people have all these wonderful intellectual commitments. They're determined to this and everything like that, and then they'll still feel fat one day, and sexy one day, and confident one day, and not confident. And I think that some of that's invisible in a monogamous relationship, you know, and because you don't have to rely on it, you don't have to call people on it.
Well, I think both relationships can work if there's communication.
Totally. But way more communication than I think people are prepared for. You know, like
In a monogamous relationship, or just
in a monogamous
in
relationship
both
too. Like I know people
relationships?
who
Both relationships.
think that monogamous relationships are simpler because it's more standard. It's not.
I don't think it's well, maybe it can be simpler because you still need the communication, but there's communication not about various people, but
Yeah.
about yourself and your partner.
Yeah. Well, like, how do you, even if, like you were saying, like, jealousy can be irrational and whatnot, but in, like, that moment, or you know that, oh, she's going to be with some other guy tonight, like, how do you deal with that and not build resentment or, that kind of thing?
The thing to remember is that humans, we equate. That's what we do, right? So, for example, someone in the Middle East will be just as turned on by the picture of someone's ankle as a guy here is by the
Sure.
picture of someone's boobs.
Yeah, because he doesn't get to see
Yeah,
them.
we equate. That's what we do, right? So, what's weird is that people in poly situations, I've noticed, their level of jealousy about things is about the same as people's level of jealousy in monogamous relationships. Because they equate, right? So someone in a monogamous relationship may be just as jealous of their partner hanging out and talking to a friend from work, you know, as someone in a poly relationship is of their partner going out to have sex with somebody. And the jealousy, it's not a matter of like, oh, that's less jealous, whatever. It's still jealousy. It still needs to be fixed. It still needs to be addressed, whatever. And it still hurts.
But isn't that an extreme situation, though? It's a lot easier for me to get over the jealousy of him hanging out with a coworker than him having sex with someone else.
It is for you because you're in a monogamous relationship.
Sure.
So put you in a poly relationship, and you
Which I'm
realize that level of disturbance is the same level of disturbance that happens in the monogamous
I
relationship.
felt like it was too chaotic. It was it was overwhelming in so many different
Yeah.
ways. And you named two of them, with
Yeah.
the various partners. It was just too much.
Yeah, and I don't think it's for everybody.
And I did find that when I wanted to step out, it was because something was lacking inside my relationship.
Right.
But if I was really happy with that partner, I didn't want anyone else.
Yeah. Well,
So then if he wanted someone else just out of variety, I'm still thinking, well, why do you want someone else? Maybe it's because I'm lacking.
Yeah.
So there's just so many.
And
factors.
that's an idea that you have to put aside in poly relationships, because poly relationships that are there because your relationship is wanting and you're missing something are not effective or good ones. You know, ones that are there to provide joyful variety are good ones. You know, if you're like poly because your partner isn't doing A, B, and C and you need them to do A, B, and C, that's not going to be a fun or joyful poly experience for anybody. You know, and I think that that's the thing that makes this hard. Not everyone's like built for poly. Not everyone's built for monogamy. You know, the reason I'm not built for monogamy is I have a really hard time telling my partner they can't have fun with somebody else.
Okay.
You know, it's not that I need to go off and be with other people. I just have a really hard time seeing why the person that I love shouldn't have a whole lot of fun.
And why I wouldn't want to bring in another man into the sexual experience, you know, with my current boyfriend. I wouldn't want him having those images and hurting. I don't want him hurting. Well,
if you know he's going to hurt, that's great. I think that in a lot of poly relationships, the idea is that there's something in the jealousy that you're going through together, if you do it the right way, where you feel like you're doing something together and you can play with it and have a good time. And again, like I'm talking about the fact that like we all have to get over jealousy. Everybody in the world gets jealous.
Sure.
Everybody does. We all have to get over it. And I don't think that things like don't ask, don't tell relationships, those are a nightmare. Because they don't give you all the tools to get over jealousy, which is talking and connecting and exploring and saying, what about this situation is you think is making you feel bad and what's making you feel good? You know, you'd be like, well, I feel good about the fact that somebody else got you off and you had a lot of fun doing it. That makes me feel good. Feel bad about the fact that you guys talked about our relationship. That hurts. You know, like one of the biggest rules in poly, a lot of people say, is you can fuck somebody or you can vent to them about your relationship, but you cannot do both.
Okay.
You know, I think that's
when you're stepping out.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's one of the best rules you could ever think of in poly, because once you've vented to someone about your relationship and you've had sex with them, you've now given them all the tools to mess up your relationship.
I agree.
You know, so the rules like that are important, and they also kind of hurt people to know that this person that you're casually fooling around with knows more than I do about you in some way. That's hurtful.
So maybe there's, I mean, obviously, I guess, you know, poly where monogamy could it just be for anybody, but at the same time, maybe it's also, because I was also wondering, like, well, is it then just certain people are just born that way, or maybe there is some learning curve, you know, like you're saying, with all relationships, there's the learning, the talking, and dealing with jealousy is kind of universal.
I've seen people learn how to engage well in a poly situation, but only if they want to.
Right.
You know, if you don't want to, you shouldn't do it.
Right.
You know, if it's something that's exciting for you and you enjoy, like, for example, the variety. I like the variety. I love, like, I have to admit, I like different body types. It's fun, you know? So it's really fun to be able to say, I'm going to, you know, be with someone with this body type and then someone with this body type. That's really kind of fun, you know? I also think that it's nice to be intimate with new people and meet new people like that and to explore them and figure out what's going on with them. And I feel like I've grown a lot because of it. So that's fun. I wouldn't mind having a monogamous relationship with someone if they really wanted to have one.
Is it because you want to make them happy? Because it's what they really want? Because you have trouble saying no? Because
No.
you did say that.
I don't have trouble saying no.
Okay.
I'm okay with saying no. But I do have trouble taking someone that I want to be in a relationship with and roping them off.
Okay, I see.
You know, like I love the idea that. This is a weird, silly, like analogy, but let's try this one. So when my first son was born, he was really sick, and I remember sitting there on the side of the bed with him and like rocking him, and I had to hold him and rock him like all night, otherwise he'd scream. So he was like yellow. It was jaundice. So I'd be sitting there rocking him, and at a certain point I thought to myself, you know what? He deserves it. He deserves me spending my whole night doing this. He deserves me going a little extra so he can be comfortable. He deserves it, right? And I keep thinking that about partners, about the things that Cosmo doesn't talk about, which is looking at your partner and saying, they deserve this. They deserve the ability to explore and to go a little further. They deserve the ability to say, I just had the coolest sexual experience with 3 people I've ever had, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. They deserve that, you know, and I want to give them that. Mm-hmm. I want that to be a part of what we're able to do for each other, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be the person who is holding them back. I want to be their Thelma if they're Louise, you know. I want to be the person who's on their side saying, you had a fantasy this morning about doing this, let's do it. Or you go do it.
Well, I think, you know, for women that I've spoken to and myself, it's not that, you know, we don't want you guys to have sex with other people and enjoy it. That's fine. Mm-hmm. It's the connection. It's the fear of loss.
Oh, I think that's always the case.
Issue.
Yeah, for
so
everyone.
Like, you know,
not just women, for men too. Yeah.
So like, here's an example. So as far as like a threesome goes, I would be more comfortable in a scenario where, let's say we're on vacation and I pick up a girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she's staying there.
And she is no threat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the sex, it doesn't matter. Even if she's better in bed, whatever, it doesn't matter.
And everybody,
because she's gonna be gone next week.
And this is something that I think everyone knows and plays around with. You know, like when we talk about like gangbang parties, very often people go into different cities to do that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, because you can know someone in a city that can set it up for you. Mm-hmm. You show up and you don't know any of these people.
Yeah.
They will never talk to you.
Sure.
You know, mm-hmm. and that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. You know, but yeah, the connection is the scary part a lot of times. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I don't think anyone of us who like this kind of stuff would be so insecure that we would be really freaked out about hearing our partner's good sexual experiences. It's the connections and the fear of losing them that's a big part.
And it goes back to the promise that you can make and that a lot of men say that they can, or they're not going to fall for somebody else. Because I think a lot of women want more than just variety. We want something deeper. We want more of a connection. So if we're
but let's not discount the fact that some women very much want.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm not lumping everybody in. I'm just telling you what I've heard, you know, since I've been doing this podcast and my personal experience. So, you know, we can go off and have sex with people, but if we continue to have sex with that same person, there's a connection that's being built.
Oh, yeah.
That maybe wouldn't be built as much on a male's scale, certain males, not all. Mm-hmm. And, like, that's an issue because then the man is going to... Is the man worried that he's going to lose her because she's going off and doing this?
You're always worried. I think everyone's worried. But the reason why poly relationships don't statistically fare any worse than monogamous ones do is the same way, like, I could say that my marriage would have been about 4 years shorter if we had been monogamous.
Okay.
Because when the partner is building those connections with people, they don't have to be physical with them first. You know, very often they can make those decisions way before that happens, you know, and intimacy, it sneaks up on us, you know, and you can be angry about it, which I choose not to be, or you can understand the fact that intimacy sometimes just, it's there. You turn around and all of a sudden it built up. It got a little darker, a little darker, a little darker. So all of a sudden it looks like love now.
Yeah, but why not just don't put yourself in that situation?
Because you are always in that situation. You can put yourself in a tin can and keep yourself away from men.
I understand, but I think you can make it, you're more exposed. There's more and less. You're always exposed, but there's more and there's less.
But again, let's go back to this idea that for monogamous and for poly people, it's a matter of scale. So the way intimacy might build for a monogamous person maybe having drinks after work is just as intimate as sex, you know? And I think that's something that we have to reflect on.
It could even be more so because of the things you're telling each other.
Yeah. And reflect on the fact that, like, monogamy is not going to keep people from leaving. It never has.
No, I know that.
Yeah. And that's the thing I had to acknowledge with poly, which is that obviously there's no perfect kind of relationship for anybody, right? But all the ideas where monogamous people were like, well, I'm afraid of this person leaving. Well, you might want to reconsider being in a relationship at all because people leave and they do it just as much through monogamous relationships as poly ones. They leave. I'm afraid of being of not seeing it coming nobody sees it coming.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Okay.
that sort of thing. But I also feel like the way intimacy builds up, and I guess this is the thing I keep coming back to, is startlingly aggressive. You know, that's why when these men are saying, I made a promise, I totally relate to that. You know, because you have to. You have to. Because there are people out there who will sweep you off your feet. You know, there are people out there with one experience will sweep you off your feet. You can go to an airport one day and your flight's delayed and you sit down and there's a guy that sits next to you and he's funny and he's kind and he's interesting and he says 2 or 3 things and all of a sudden, wow, you know, and you never saw that coming. And the only thing that can stop you from letting go is your promise.
I agree.
Yeah. So I feel like for whatever kind of relationship, that promise is really important. You know?
Absolutely.
If you're a polynormative person, if you're not a monogamous person, I mean, I don't understand a lot of relationship anarchy issues because that's not something that I've ever wanted. You know, I don't.
What do you?
Relationship anarchy, where anything goes in relationships, and you know, I feel like
Oh, you like the rules. That's what you're saying.
I do.
Okay.
You know, I think that rules are important. Rules are your commitment that what you have is important. You know, whether it's a monogamous relationship or a poly one, and recognizing the fact that rules are sometimes totally irrational.
But don't people like want to be someone else's everything? How can you be someone's everything if they're sharing their time with someone else?
I think that we, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, want to be someone's everything. First of all, being someone's everything is not all it's cracked up to
No,
be.
I understand.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of
yeah.
being someone's everything.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
That you're cherished.
That's the thing. I'm an extremely romantic person, and I wouldn't be a poly person if I thought that romance or the sense of singularity would suffer in a poly situation. The sense that this person is a unique person that you are completely diving into, that you are absolutely passionately in love with. You know, I think that has to be the cornerstone of any good relationship. You know, so I'm with you. I totally agree, but I don't think it's diminished by the fact that you can spend time with other people. Just like I don't think it's diminished in a monogamous relationship with the understanding that this guy's going to go out and have drinks with his friends, or someone's going to go out and, you know, party with their girlfriends or something like that.
Well, you said it even with your subs that you focus all your attention, but it's all your attention in that moment.
Yeah.
But it's not like,
Well, that's all we have.
okay, it's in the moment. You're right. No,
You know,
that's true.
If you're monogamous, that's all you have too. It's like, and what's weird about that is that you're familiar with John Gottman? He wrote a whole bunch about relationships, and so his
What are some of the
theories.
books
I'm
that
trying to
I've
remember what the
read?
name of his last book was.
I was
And my
trying to
phone's
think of
off.
all the poly books that I've read.
Yeah.
And the names were just escaping
Besides
me.
Ethical Slut, yeah.
Yeah, besides
Yeah.
that. That's
Which
the most popular.
which is so old now. If you read it now, it seems like so hippie, doesn't it? It's
yeah,
like a
for
hippie
sure.
book.
But some of the things that you touched on, I remembered them
Yeah.
being in the book.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's definitely a good book. Well, John Gottman, I'm trying to remember the name of his last book, but he positioned all relationships as a series of bids for attention,
Okay.
right? And one of the reasons why we can't get to the bottom of what we're upset about sometimes is because some of these bids are really small and pointless to argue about, but they're all about attention. So you attention and affection. So you're walking down the street and you reach over to grab your partner's hand and he kind of pulls it away a little bit, right? It's a tiny little bid for attention. He rejects it and it hurts,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
but you kind of can't talk about it because you sound like an asshole.
I would totally say something.
Well,
absolutely.
you know, it's just
Absolutely.
all right. But there's other smaller things. Like for example, you don't have your toothbrush, and so you use your partner's toothbrush. He comes to the bathroom and he's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, I just use your toothbrush," and he goes like that and walks away.
I
Right.
think I would laugh.
So, but
I don't know. I'm an over communicator. I communicate.
I get that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that this hundreds and hundreds of times a day, these tiny bids for attention happen.
Oh, sure.
Right. Hundreds of times a day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they start to build
I've
up.
read things on this.
Yeah, they start to build up. And the thing is, the smaller ones we can't discuss because it turns us into jerks when we discuss the smaller ones. When we discuss the smaller ones, we're like, oh my God, please stop. because you cannot
other
focus on
person
these
is
small
saying
ones.
that?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
I'm still going to bring it up.
when we discuss the smaller ones, well, I'm sure you're not going to bring up every single one of them.
I pretty much do, I think.
Because they are so
Yeah.
small. Some of them are actually even micro bids. They're like tiny ass little things, But it's all bids for your partner's attention, and then the partner gets to reject or accept.
Well, I think that they talk about the breakdown of relationships, and that is one of the hugest things that break down a relationship.
These start to build.
Yeah.
The rejections start to build, and the thing is, it's hard to, like, all of a sudden now you're talking about 30 or 40,000 tiny things, as opposed to the one big thing, and that's going to make you feel like you're not getting anywhere in a conversation. And I think that's interesting is we never think about these things as adding up and building, but they do build, and even
that's how resentment is created.
Yeah, and what's weird about this is that resentment, I think, creates the emotion that resentment creates on the other side is worse. So you're
feeling resentment, and then your partner's feeling is worse.
So too much resentment, right? If you begin to resent your partner too much, right? What happens is your partner has two choices: either accept your resentment as foundational and true, or begin to develop a contempt for your opinion.
It's usually the latter.
And a contempt is the worst emotion in a relationship, apparently. So that book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about these thin slicing experiments where the computer looked at all these different emotions, like, quickly, like a split second emotions, and then factored that against the relationship longevity and decided that contempt is the worst emotion for relationship. You've read that, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't realize that resentment is the other side of contempt. Too much resentment creates an environment where a partner has no choice but to start to develop a sense of contempt for the partners.
I agree.
And that's hard because that's developed through this. And contempt is where everything starts to fall apart.
I actually thought it's falling apart with the resentment, because as soon as I start feeling resentment, I got to get out. Like it's leading to the end.
Yeah. And the thing is too is that if you're a truly poly person, I think that there's a lot of resentment that comes into feeling like you're bottled up. Like you can't, like,
Well, shouldn't you be more free?
Well, if your partner starts to say, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that.
Okay.
That restrictions, that's sensitive. But what I've noticed in relationships and where I fall down sometimes is that if you basically step back and be like, do what you want, the other person can sometimes kind of forget they're in a relationship at all.
I agree.
So if you accept things that you consider unacceptable too many times, you're only hurting yourself.
How do you think, like female-led relationships, how does that fall into poly situations?
Well, it's so strange because I think one of the things that FetLife has done wrong to the fetish community is that it's allowed people to live in the fetish world 24/7.
Okay.
So you develop your persona, and FetLife lets you sort of be in it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think it's healthy to be in your fetish persona 24/7.
That's interesting.
So, like when someone says this is a female-led relationship or a male-led relationship, I kind of get squicky about that because that's not a mutual relationship.
Yes, because you're about the equality of it.
But
some people like that. They want the direction of it.
They do.
And then on my side, I want to control.
Yeah.
So it's mutually benefiting.
Well, I'm one of those people who and I think that this is me being very old school. I want this to be a role play.
Okay.
I want this to be an adventure into exploration. I don't want this.
You're talking about with the scenes or in the relationship?
In general, I want, when we exchange power, I want it to be a role play. I don't want us to permanently exchange power, because that is something that I think is a complex political issue for me to work through.
Okay.
Like when I see someone who lives an actual 50s household lifestyle, for example, that's very hard for me to manage politically, because I feel like there is something going on here that, even if it's an absolutely consensual choice on everyone's part.
Yeah, I do hear that from people,
Yeah.
and they tell me they're happy, and I'm like, they must not be happy, but they look happy. But I just can't imagine, being happy.
I don't want to superimpose my beliefs over other people.
Yes.
I definitely don't want to do that. I'm uncomfortable by this because I feel like the transference of power only works amongst equals.
Okay.
Otherwise, you end up with something like this. Like,
Well, maybe they feel equal though, even though they're letting someone run the show.
so
Like with the 1950s household. I don't know. I never understood it.
well, one of the reasons why the Bible, for example, looks so dated is because our understanding of contract law has changed dramatically since the Bible, right? So the covenant between God and the Israelites looks bad to us now because it's an ancient Semitic contract between unequals. I'm your God, you're my people.
Sure.
I have redress in this contract. You can't do shit about it. You know, not only can you not choose not to sign this contract, you can't choose to get out of it. There's nothing you can do about it. I have all the power in this contract, right? So contract law accommodated that, like, and that led to things like slavery. You know, where a contract between unequals is forged, where one person has redress and the other person does not, right? So our current ideas around contract law don't permit that. Two people have to be on solid, like, equal ground and equal footing in order to sign a contract together, right? And that's our understanding right now. So it makes me feel very comfortable when I see a permanent sort of like power exchange that disequates people like that.
Okay.
You know? And I think
But
that
is it permanent though? Because like in our relationship, whatever he feels really strongly about, he's going to speak up. And I respect that. And I do view him as my equal. But majority of the time, like, I'm kind of running things.
Yeah.
But he's okay with that. And I think he likes that.
Well, I think that, again, this is such a tough thing, you know? And as part of, like, my cultural conditioning, I have less problem with this than I would if the sexes were reversed, you know?
Yes,
which
absolutely.
I probably need to look into,
Yeah,
but what can I do
for
about that,
sure.
right? Just like we've
Well,
had...
maybe because you have the empathy of women and the oppression that women have had over the years.
Yeah, everything's contextualized.
Because it was the same thing with the small penis humiliation versus
Exactly.
like the woman who's
Well,
for
that's
her bigger body.
Yeah, that's living in the context of where we live, right? You know, so it's like in the context of how women suffer from being considered second-class citizens in our culture,
Yes.
how can we manage our feelings around that in the context of male-led relationships? So it's all contextualized, and the fact that this subverts that cultural standard makes it a lot easier to, you know, to walk into and feel good about.
I feel the same way when I see like some of the doms like ordering around their subs, like go get the bag. I'm like, you should be getting the bag. But it's the same thing because I'm just, you know, remembering the oppression of women, what we've had to go through, and here's this guy telling her to go get this bag, and it hits a chord with me, and I don't like it.
Try the optics of this one. So I'm not sure if you've ever been in a situation like this, and I have, and you're talking to a male dom at a dungeon who is an older gentleman, and kneeling next to him naked on a leash is a young black girl who is his slave for the day. Okay. You know? And
I would think it would be interesting because that seems like a role play scenario. So that actually wouldn't bother me.
But the optics of it are hard to manage, obviously. You know? I mean,
I don't know. I don't think I would have an issue with that.
Well, slavery in this country was such a brutal...
But it's consensual.
Debilitary.
It's just like with...
Sure it is. Yeah, it is.
It's consensual.
It sure
so that's
is.
why I don't have an issue with it.
But it's hard to not feel something in your stomach from it.
Okay.
You know? It's hard to walk away from that and not feel something. And that maybe that's fine because there's that sense of like, this is so wrong, you know, and that maybe that's feeling good about that, you know? I understand that.
Well, because it's pushing boundaries.
It sure
it's boundaries of our mind, and I like that. So that's why
I don't
think
love the
would be
direction it
turned
pushes
off.
the boundaries, though.
Well, the boundaries were set in place before our time, and
Yeah.
now we have to push them.
Yeah. I have to admit that if that were an older black woman with a
Then
naked
there you
white
go,
man on a
yes.
leash, I would feel much more comfortable about it because there isn't that cultural context surrounding it that is being played into. You know, there's always that sense
Absolutely.
that the minute we start playing into a cultural context, we buy into it. You know, that's why it's awkward. Like, hey, you have dinner at someone's house and they're living in a 50s household, and it's awkward. You know, And I don't want to be judgmental about people's kinks. I certainly don't.
I try not to overthink it because I am making judgments if I'm thinking about it. I'm just trying to accept it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I unfortunately can't avoid overthinking anything
You
like
can't.
that.
I can turn it off.
Especially when there's a political aspect to it, you know, when we have to deal with the politics of it, because we kind of don't get to walk away from that. Okay. You know, we live in this world, you know, and that's hard. I remember the very first time that I was dating a black girl who was really aggressively into race play and wanted to explore black inferiority in a race play scene, how hard that was, and how there were certain words that I just couldn't make myself use.
Okay.
And even right now, I've talked to some doms who are like, look, given the context of what's happening right now, I don't feel comfortable, for example, doing Nazi concentration camp play.
Sure.
Which I might have felt really comfortable doing 2 years ago.
Sure.
You know, but it's just hitting a little too close to home contextually right now. You know, putting on a Nazi armband just doesn't feel like play right now.
Because too much is going on in the world.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the race play.
Yeah.
Because of all the stuff that's going on in like the college campuses.
Yeah, totally.
It's I don't know, some of it. What was that university that we were watching?
Well, that was kind of the reverse, actually, right?
Well, that's what it was. It was the African American students trying to get the white faculty to stay home.
It was called Evergreen.
Yeah.
I think there's a thing about it where one of the professors was, I think he was he fired and then he sued the school
he's Jewish
or something
too.
like that.
Like he's Jewish.
He's a liberal.
He's a liberal. He's been an advocate for equality and all this stuff. And what it was supposed to be like a day of absence. And originally, the black students and faculty would stay home. So then the white people and whoever else was left would be aware their presence is missed.
Yeah.
Look at how much they're adding into our society. And it was a really like beautiful thing. And then it got turned into something terrible where the African American students are saying, okay, anyone who's white, you have to stay home. Like, we don't want you here for this day. This is our day.
I'm not fond of the idea of you have to, but I am.
Yeah, that was the issue that he had, the professor. He didn't want to be told what he had to do.
I do think
it was supposed to be a choice.
Yeah, and the choice is great. What I do like is I like it when groups under oppression give members of other groups a chance to participate in the way they respond from a protest perspective. Okay. Like Martin Luther King did some really amazing things, but one of the things he did was really interesting was going into schools and thanking the Jewish students for their participation in the civil rights movement, even sort of before they really did participate so much, you know, sort of giving them the chance to step up and to be part of it. And now look, I mean, the Freedom Riders were, there's a ton of Jewish kids in the Freedom Riders.
Well, that's a great thing, but it also can be a manipulation. You do realize that.
Well, I think all calls to action are manipulations.
Oh, I agree.
You know, we're trying to get people to do things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that showing gratitude to a group of people to inspire them to step up is probably one of the pieces of manipulation I'm least upset about.
Okay.
I don't think we use gratitude enough in the context of, like, for example.
Well, I would be curious if it was pure gratitude, or because there's motives, and I try to figure out what are the motives.
We all have motives. Everyone has motives.
Exactly.
His motive was to get more Jewish students to step up and be part of the civil rights movement.
Okay, I see that.
And it worked. And I think that it worked in a way that was, I think, uplifting for people. So I have no problem using gratitude as a tool even to bring people together. Like, for example, one of the things that I would love to see is this city has had a problem for a while with the Semitic and the black communities kind of getting together. The city should
together
with each other and feeling like they have a mutual goal. So one of the things I think is interesting is that...
Why? Because they're both minorities? Is that what?
Because they've had traditionally they've had some problems.
The oppression.
Well, they've had some problems together in the past,
together.
traditionally, And I think that one of the things the city can do to fix that is, imagine this. Imagine a statue built downtown that had two parts, and one part was celebrating the Jewish students that participated in the civil rights movement as the Freedom Riders. The other part was celebrating the black soldiers that were pivotal in liberating the concentration camps during World War II. Because a lot of the soldiers that liberated the camps were part of suicide squads, and they were African American, you know? And so, like, my grandparents were talking always about how, you know, when the camps were liberated, there was all these black soldiers there and everything like that. So something like that, where they're basically expressing gratitude as a method of melding communities together. You know, I think it's a fantastic tool. You know,
I agree.
I think one of the things that's fun about BDSM in general, just pulling this back home, is that you have so many tools to work with, and things like gratitude and affection and love and stuff like that are things you can play with and work with. I remember doing this scene once at GD2 where there were these two submissive people who were very a lot of submissive people are very honor bound. It's like, I have committed to doing this, I'm going to do this. You know, I'm sure you know people like that.
Absolutely.
I tied them together and beat them, and the idea was I would beat on one of them until they said pass, and then beat the other one.
I like that.
And
That's
so,
great, actually.
And so the first person tried so hard
yeah, for sure.
and put up with
To
so
take
much
it.
to take it just to protect the other one. And when they were afterwards, all they wanted to do for aftercare was hug each other.
That's nice.
You know?
Yeah.
But it was
Great
interesting
scene.
because it was kind of like love play. You
It
know?
is, absolutely.
Using people's passionate desire to help each other as sort of a...
And it brings them closer together.
Yeah, you should have seen it afterwards when they were just hugging each other and just being like, thank you, and everything like that. And, you know, it was a nice piece of aftercare. It was really fun. I was like, I'm not involved in this, I guess.
I've noticed a lot of the male doms, you guys come up with these brilliant scenarios, like talking to all you guys. It's, I don't know, it's just very imaginative.
I
Like
think-
you guys are laying in bed just coming up with all these scenes and scenarios.
It's driven by sexual energy. It's driven by the fact that these two girls in particular were gorgeous. They were absolutely beautiful and absolutely people that it's really easy to just fixate on. You know, so it's driven by the fact that the people that you're building these scenes for are just people that you really want.
Okay.
You know, I feel it's all sexual energy, and there's this weird part of me that thinks that everything truly creative we've done on this planet has been driven through sexual energy. You know, people get up on stage and they play in a band and they build buildings and things like that, and they do all these things. And there's a part of me that thinks that sex is such a huge part of it, such a huge driving force. You know, when you paint the thing that you love, you know, when you write a song about the thing that you love, when you build things to people that you can't stop thinking about.
Well, for you, sex is all wrapped up into the BDSM, but for a lot of people that I've talked to and myself, we feel like that's one of the misconceptions, is that BDSM's always leading to sex.
Yeah.
Because so much of the porn that's out there, the fetish porn, it's sex wrapped up into it. So the people who are not in this community, that's all they know.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's like it's indistinguishable. It's all part of the same thing. You know, I've certainly played with people that it's not, where they're looking for, just one or the other. But I kind of feel like, for me, the energy of sex is what drives it all. It makes it all unique and interesting and fascinating. You know, like I've gone on the route where there's been a slave coming over and she's cleaning my house. You know, and
That's my favorite.
if she's just gonna, you know.
It is. It's my favorite.
But I've noticed that a lot of the female submissives who want to come clean your house, for example, it's a little more hands-on. They're not. It's not just a matter of them being naked walking around the house cleaning it.
Yeah.
You know, they want your participation. You know, so you have a dildo at the end of a stick and you're, fucking them with it while they're doing it, or you're humiliating them, or you're peeing on them, or whatever you're doing. You're a part of this, and they rely on the fact that they look fucking hot when they're doing it. They rely on the fact that in the little outfit, with no panties on, bent over, breasts out, that it's impossible to look away.
Okay.
You know? And I think that's part of what makes it really good for them, that sense that you can't look away.
And why do you think the men are doing it? Why are the men serving?
I think men who are serving want more than they traditionally get.
I agree.
You know?
Absolutely.
And they want that adoration. They want to feel like they are wanted. They want to feel like they're the center of something and everything like that. It's just much, much harder to get. When I dom men, I try and give them everything that they know they want, and it's hard because they want what the women want, and I know that it's just harder to get it. You know, if you've got a boy, you know, this guy who's totally gorgeous that you're really into, that you're really excited by, and you can't keep your eyes off him and stuff like that, you can do something exciting with them. But I think the men are aware of the fact they're not getting what they want, and they tend to be sometimes mouthy about it. You know, sometimes...
I haven't really run into that. They may drop off, but it's usually because I'm just not putting the effort in. But they know that there's always someone else that's lined up. So the fear of like losing the dom, you know, the dame, whatever... they're gonna keep going, and they're gonna make more of an effort because, hey, she's being served by 3 guys, and they're all listed on her FetLife profile. I know she has other slaves, and they ask questions about them, whatever. But if they drop off, there's always gonna be someone else to replace them. I think men know that.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. I'm sure that men recognize the fact that they don't have the kind of value
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that a very attractive naked female sub has.
Yeah, yes.
You know, and I think they wish they did.
Okay. So you think that's what it is then? That's why they're trying?
They definitely wish they did. And I keep thinking that when I look through, like, you ever look, like, on FetLife, you're, like, looking through submissive people's pictures, right? Women and men. And the more desirable someone is, the more they have their own pictures up. That's clear. That's good, right? They're happier with their bodies. They're happier with themselves. You know, they're more comfortable doing that. That makes sense, right? Men very often will have things from all over the place posted. Like, they'll have 1,000 pictures all over the place of things they would like someone to do to them. You know?
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Sometimes it's a cartoon, whatever it is. It's like, you know.
Sometimes it's like screenshots from porn or.
Yeah. But I would like someone to do this to me.
Yeah,
and I would really like that. And women don't dive into that arena quite so much, where it's like, this is what I want someone to do to me. You know, not so much. They might focus on things they think are beautiful, you know, or amazing. But the men, it's really very much like, someone do this to me. And the submissive men. And they find themselves in submissive servo relationships with women where they are doing things, not having things done to them.
Yes.
You know, and they're cleaning and cooking and stuff like that, which may be good if they had someone doing something to them, you know?
Well, they'll be rewarded, but it's as I see fit when I feel like it.
Yeah.
They don't get to choose. They're doing this to please me. And they need to get that in their mind. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Yeah. That's the hardest thing, I think, to get solidified in their mind.
Yeah, and I think that the men are, they definitely have in their mind something they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would love that thing that they want to be the same as something that the women want too. I think that that's one of the reasons why a lot of these men are so drawn towards trans girls as well.
Why is that?
Because
I thought with trans it was the ultimate way to be dominated.
It is.
You're being fucked.
You're being fucked by a woman, basically.
Yeah.
You know?
What looks like a woman, but she has a penis.
And she is a woman, you know, and she just happens to have a cock.
Yeah, she feels like it. Yes,
she just happens to have a cock. What's interesting about this is,
I'm saying, like the chromosomes.
Yeah, but
that's
this
what
is.
I'm saying.
Yeah, but I mean, she's a woman. But here's the thing that's interesting about trans girls. I think to a submissive male, a cock means something. Cocks want things they desire. Like, when a guy is hard, he will put that thing anywhere. He wants something. He's passionately desiring something. If you're bent over and there's a cock coming, it wants you really bad, right? So if you are a sub man and you see a T-girl, you know, and she's this pretty girl and she looks like, you know, she's a girl.
Yeah.
And she has the thing between her legs that wants.
That's interesting.
You are all about that, you know?
Because the man wants that
to be
same
wanted.
feeling, yeah.
To be wanted.
That's
and
interesting.
cocks are not good at being sent as random pictures to random strangers. They are good at wanting things. That's what
I've
cocks are
noticed
good
that
at.
the T-girls on FetLife, the really pretty ones, their pictures are loved hundredfold over
Yes.
and over and over again. They're extremely popular.
Yeah, and I think it's a fantasy, and I like dating and playing with
Are you
transsexuals.
pansexual?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love being with transsexuals. It's a lot of fun. But I like being with transsexuals as well, who love like playing with the rules and and don't necessarily feel like they people who know who they are and love playing with it. And have a good sense of humor about it and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
So you see people in FetLife sometimes who've been around for a little bit and they're like, they know they're having fun with it,
Mm-hmm.
and they like who they are. People who like who they are much better in bed anyways. But I think the reason why the T-girl is so exciting for a lot of these submissive men is that this is a real woman who can want them the way a cock wants.
Yeah. I've never thought of that. That's really interesting. I just thought it was the domination thing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's that too, because being fucked by a real woman who's actually capable of coming in you,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
is pretty. Like I had this idea a couple years ago where I was like, what should do? They should make a Fieldo, like a strap-on cock that goes inside the woman and sucks up all of her juices, and then spurts them out the front of it.
That's interesting.
So men can feel like they're actually being filled up with, like the woman who's fucking them, her actual juices. So this idea resonates incredibly with every submissive man I've ever talked to.
Okay.
They're like, holy crap, you have to make that. You need to make that, right? The idea of being filled up by their
I even
partner.
know dominant men that like T-girls.
Oh, I like pegging. I like being pegged. I like T-girls. I don't like being dominated, but I will bottom.
Okay.
And T-girls, I like them. I've dated them and everything like that. But I think that's outside of the fetishization part. Because we're all people, but we're also fetishes. And that's the hard thing for us to accept. Like, you're very pretty, dark-haired, like, dominant girl, right? So someone could meet you and just fall for you outside of the fetishization of, like, I really need to be with a dominant girl who has dark hair and, blah, blah, blah. So someone could meet, like, a transsexual person and fall for them as a person. And then they could also be a chaser. And that's what they want so badly, a transsexual person.
Okay.
We all have our own unique kinds of chasers. I was just telling you that as I get older, I'm realizing that the people who are actively chasing me are looking for a daddy dom.
Okay. That's the messages that you're getting.
Yeah. So we're all capable of being fetishized.
Well, how is it for you finding partners then? Because you're getting bombarded with messages?
Not necessarily bombarded.
Okay.
So it's just like, I would say about 25% of the people who reach out to me, like on their own, are people who are looking for daddy doms.
So how do you find your partners then?
I have not. FetLife is a terrible place to find people.
Okay.
You can't even search very well. It is a great place to set up parties. A great place to find munches. So I love munches.
So
It's
those are
great.
the events you do?
Yeah, and I love parties. I have to admit that I'm actually more fond of finding people in the vanilla world and pulling them into the fetish world.
Why is that?
I don't
Do
know,
you
it's
want to
so
have new
much fun.
experiences? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much fun
I like that too.
to give someone new experiences and to be on that journey with them.
But I think they have to be excited about what
They
it
do.
is too. So for my dating sites, when I did the dating sites, I put it out there. My screen name is BDSM related.
Yeah.
There's all my pictures of me looking super dominant and powerful. And then the whole description is just basically laying it out for you. This is what you're getting. And then they know that that's what it's about. So
Yeah.
they're attracted to it. They may not know what
Anything about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what BDSM is, what exactly they're signing up for, either temporarily
Right.
or whatever, but the idea is still there.
Like, I agree. I think that's so much fun. I love meeting someone who, like, one of my first questions, like, when I'm on a date with someone where it's going well, is I'll ask them, if you could go to the biggest porn site in the world that's categorized, what are the first 3 categories you'd go to?
Oh, I don't know. I don't do porn, so I don't know.
Yeah. But it's interesting to hear people's responses, and then you can kind of figure out if you want to dive a little deeper. But I've noticed that a lot of people that I meet outside of FetLife, like, they have kinky parts, and they just have things they never thought that they would ever be able to do.
Okay.
Like, you
so
could
they're
never do
So
this.
they're watching it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they're
Porn?
watch porn. Like, for example, I had a friend who watched threesome porn over and over again, and she's like, I've never been with a guy who would ever be okay with me having another guy in the room at the same time.
Okay, so she's fantasizing.
And she's like, it's never going to happen. I'm like, well, it can totally happen. There's no, I mean, you could make that happen tonight if you want to, you know, it's not hard.
Well, it could be the partners that she's picking are not going to be
Exactly.
open to it. But if you set her up with 2 random guys that you know, then it's going to happen.
But that's the thing. It's like, this fantasy that she has was just not something she could ever imagine actualizing, because no one in her life up to that point has ever been okay with that. Every guy she's met apparently was just so much like, no other penises around you, you know, and she can't imagine dating someone who wasn't like that, you know. And so just having that chance to do that, or someone says, well, you know, I'd really love to have sex in public, but how do you do that? You know, and if you're not in the fetish world, you might not know how to do that without getting arrested.
So with the partners that you find, you just come across them then? You're not finding them on FetLife? What about it like GD2, or if you go to any of the other dungeons?
Those are great places. I find that I meet people in person way better than online.
Okay.
Online's I feels like it's not a very good place to meet people. In person, I feel like I can be kind of charming. I'm not sure how you experience this, but
Well, I don't like to be picked up. I pick up if I'm in public, so I don't want to be approached. But I'm okay with them approaching me online, because I'm not going to go searching through all these things. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So it's the way that they can still hunt me, because men like to hunt. You know, not all of them, but some.
Yeah, I definitely find who I want and chase them. I definitely do that. But I think that my philosophy around dating has always been that, like, I have lots of room for friends. You know? So if the worst thing that can happen on a date is I end up with one other friend, that's cool. I'm totally cool with that. You know? I have lots of room for friends. So if I can start this, like, date with the idea that we're definitely going to end up as friends by the end of the night, you know, whatever else happens, I'm okay with, you know, whatever.
Because you just love people and...
I like people and I like having new friends. And it's weird, like, especially when you're an artist and you realize that this has happened so many times to me, where I'll meet somebody and then a couple months later, you know, after being their friend for a while, I'll realize, oh, you do this. And, you know, as an artist, very often you could use their help on something, you know, or I can photograph them or something like that, you know. But I'm not one of those people who is terrified of the friend zone. Some people are just going to be friends. And I think what's interesting about BDSM too is, like, there was someone that I had played around with once, and, you know, we're not going to do it again because, first of all, she's really kind of into, like, the one night thing, you know, and we'll be perfectly fine friends, probably never have sex again or play around again. But I think that that's the thing that happens in the fetish world too. And you have to be okay with that. You know, just because you played with someone at a party does not mean it's ever going to happen again.
Thanks for listening to Bound to Talk. Look for us on YouTube, iTunes, or visit boundtotalk.com.